He waited for the mother to return, but the one who came needed his help more. The night was colder than it should have been. Elias sat by the dying fire outside his cabin, eyes fixed on the tree line where the forest turned to shadow. He'd come back every night for a week waiting. Sometimes he thought he saw her there. The tall figure half hidden behind the birches, breathing mist into the dark. Another Bigfoot. The one who'd carried her child out of the flood.
Wait, come
He'd
on.
left food, dried fruit, fish. Never touched, just gone by morning. He told himself that was enough, but the waiting didn't stop. Tonight, the fire burned low, flames shrinking to embers that clicked and sighed. Wind moved through the valley, cold, whispering through pine needles like someone remembering his name. Then it came a sound too soft to be threat, too heavy to be the wind. Footsteps. He rose slowly, hand on his lantern, heart hammering against ribs. From the edge of the trees, something moved, a shadow breaking away from shadow. Not tall, not the mother. Smaller, limping. Elias lifted the light. The glow caught fur matted with mud and blood, a shoulder gashed open, a face he almost recognized. It was older than the child, younger than the mother, the other one. The adolescent caught between both worlds. It staggered once, then fell to its knees in the snow, breathing hard. Steam rose from its back, its hand pressed to its chest like it was trying to keep something in. Elias dropped to his knees beside it. "It's all right. You're safe," he said softly. The creature looked up, eyes glowing faint amber. Pain and trust tangled together. Then it reached toward him, and he saw what it held, a bundle of wet fur and pine needles. Inside a smaller shape, another cub, barely breathing. Elias froze. "You brought it here," he whispered. The older one made a low sound, half growl, half plea. Not a warning, a call for help. He took the bundle, felt the weak heartbeat beneath. Still alive. Faint, but there. He looked back at the forest. No answer. No mother. Only the wind. He whispered. "Then I guess it's my turn again." The creature bowed its head once, as if in agreement, and collapsed into the snow. Two's pause, soft hum, heartbeat faint. Before we go further, the narrator's voice fades in. Comment the name of your city, because mercy doesn't stop after one story sometimes. It finds its way back to your door. Part 1. The Wounded and the Weak. The cabin smelled of pine smoke and wet fur. Elias laid the small one on a wool blanket near the fire. Its chest barely moved, each breath shallow and whistling like air through reeds. He stripped off his coat, wrapped the cub tighter, and rubbed its arms to bring warmth back into the limbs. The older Bigfoot sat slumped against the wall, blood soaking the snow that melted beneath its body. It watched him, eyes glazed but aware, trust and pain flickering in every blink. "You'll both be all right," Elias murmured, voice shaking. He poured warm water into a tin bowl, mixed in salt, and began cleaning the wound on its shoulder. The creature flinched, teeth bared, but didn't strike. It just gripped the floorboards, every muscle tense. "Easy," Elias said softly. "I've got you." Steam rose as he pressed the cloth against the gash. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. He tore strips from his own shirt, wrapped them tight. When he finished, The creature's breathing steadied. He turned back to the small one. Its fur was trembling under the blanket. Eyes rolled back white. He felt the chest again, no warmth. Just the faintest pulse. "Come on," he whispered. He fed the fire, cupping his hands near the flame, then pressed the heat gently against the cub's chest. It twitched once, then again. A gasp escaped its throat, thin, broken, but alive. The older one made a low, trembling sound, a tone Elias had never heard before. Not anger, not warning, relief. He looked up. They were staring at each other now. Man and creature. Two beings that shouldn't share the same kind of pain, and yet did. Elias smiled faintly. "There you go," he said, voice barely a breath. "You're both going to make it." Outside, wind howled against the shutters, but the cabin held. Inside, the only sound was the crackle of fire and 3 hearts trying to find the same rhythm again. He sat down beside them, hands trembling from exhaustion, and whispered, "No one's dying tonight." The older Bigfoot's eyes closed slowly, its body easing into sleep. Elias leaned back against the wall, eyes half shut, listening to the breath of 2 creatures who'd almost been lost to the same river he once thought would take him too. "If you're still listening," the narrator whispers, "mercy isn't loud. It's the sound of breathing, coming back." Part 2. Signs in the Snow. Dawn broke pale and silent. Elias woke to the sound of dripping water snow melting from the roof in slow, steady rhythm. The fire had burned low, but the room was warm. He turned toward the cot. The small one slept curled against the older one's side, tiny hand still tangled in fur twice its size, both breathing, alive. He smiled, then rose quietly, pulling on his coat. When he opened the door, the world outside was silver, the kind of morning that feels too clean to belong to the night before. Fresh snow covered the clearing, but not untouched. Tracks cut through it large, heavy, deliberate. Circling the cabin, stopping at the door, Elias crouched. Each print was deep, edges crisp, steam still rising faintly from the heat left behind. He followed the line of tracks toward the trees. They didn't lead away in panic. They stopped just short of the clearing, as if whoever made them had stood watch all night. A gust of wind moved through the pines. For a second, he thought he saw it a shadow tall and still between the trunks. But when he blinked, it was gone. He whispered, "You came back." The forest didn't answer. It didn't have to. He walked a few more steps, found something half buried under the frost. A shape wrapped in woven grass and bark, a small pouch, no bigger than his hand. Inside, dry berries and folded leaves. A gift or a warning? He couldn't tell. He looked back at the cabin, saw smoke curling gently from the chimney, and made his choice. Elias knelt, set the pouch on a flat stone, and placed beside it a strip of his own bread, still warm from the fire. "Trade," he said softly. "Piece for piece." The wind stilled, and from deep in the woods came a low hum, 3 short, 1 long. He closed his eyes. It wasn't threat. It was acknowledgement. When he went back inside, the older Bigfoot lifted its head weakly, sniffing the air, then looked toward the door, eyes calm, almost knowing. Elias knelt beside it. "They're out there," he said quietly. "You're not alone anymore." The creature blinked slow, a breath like a sigh escaping its chest. Then it reached one arm out, resting its hand near his boot, a gesture so simple, yet it said everything. Words couldn't. He nodded, his throat tight. "Yeah," he whispered. "Neither am I. If you're still listening." The narrator murmurs. Some rescues don't end at sunrise. They begin there. Part 3. The Return of the Mother. By late afternoon, the snow had turned soft. Light dripped through the trees like honey, catching on wet branches and drifting smoke from the cabin's chimney. Elias was chopping wood behind the house when he felt that stillness again. Not silence. Observation. He turned slowly, axe still in hand. At the edge of the clearing, half hidden by the pines, stood a figure, tall, broad-shouldered, her fur darker than before, glinting copper where the light touched. The mother. For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them felt alive, as if even the wind was waiting to see what would happen. Elias set the axe down. He raised his hands, palms open. Empty. She stepped forward once, just enough for him to see the scar running across her shoulder, the same wound she'd taken in the flood. It had healed, but the fur around it grew in silver streaks, like a memory carved into her skin. Behind him, the cabin door creaked open. The older adolescent Bigfoot looked out, one arm still bandaged, eyes wide but calm. When it saw her, it made a sound low, trembling, full of relief. The mother's head turned toward the sound, her chest lifted, and for the first time, Elias heard it, a soft rumble that wasn't growl or threat, but something deeper. Love. The younger one limped forward through the snow, stopping halfway between them. For a heartbeat, it looked at Elias, then back at her as if asking permission. Elias nodded. "Go," he said softly. "She's here now." The creature moved, slow at first, then faster, until it was in her arms again. The sound that filled the forest wasn't a roar. It was quiet, like the earth exhaling. Elias felt the sting in his eyes before he could stop it. He wiped his face with the back of his sleeve, and when he looked again, she was watching him. Not as prey, not as threat, but as something equal. She lowered her head, a gesture almost human, then turned toward the trees. The young one held close. As she walked away, snow fell from the branches above, spiraling in slow motion through the golden light. Elias stood there long after they vanished. The air around him warm despite the cold. For a man who'd once been afraid of every sound in these woods, he realized the silence they left behind was the kind worth keeping. "If you're still listening," the narrator whispers, "remember, even in the wild." Gratitude has a language, and sometimes it sounds like silence. Part 4. The Night of Thanks. Night settled over the valley like a blanket of velvet. The snow reflected moonlight, casting a pale blue glow across the cabin walls. Elias sat by the fire again, hands wrapped around a tin cup of coffee gone cold. The air outside was still. No storm, no threat. Only the kind of quiet that comes when everything has already been said. He stared into the flames, thinking of the way the mother had bowed her head, the way the young one had looked back one last time before vanishing into the trees. Behind him, The wind pressed softly against the windows, not howling, not begging to come in, just moving like breath. He smiled faintly, murmuring, "You're welcome," though no one was there to hear it. Then, from somewhere deep in the forest, it came faint at first. A rhythm carried through the pines. 3 short sounds, 1 long. The same pattern that had followed him for months, but tonight it was different, slower, steadier. Not a warning, a greeting. Elias set his cup down, walked to the door, and opened it. Cold air brushed his face. The forest stretched out before him, silver and endless under the moon. The sound came again. Closer. This time, thump. 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 Whoom. It echoed against the valley walls, rolled through the trees, and faded like a heartbeat going to sleep. He stepped onto the porch, breath white in the air. Somewhere in the distance, a faint shimmer of light rippled through the fog, like a reflection off water or eyes, watching, unafraid. He whispered, "Good night. You made it home." The forest answered with one final gust of wind, soft and warm. It passed through the trees, across the cabin, and through his hair like a hand brushing goodbye. Elias looked up at the stars. For the first time in years, the sky felt closer than the dark. He went back inside, fed the fire one last piece of wood, and let the quiet settle. Not heavy, just full. If you're still listening. The narrator's voice lowers. Mercy always echoes. It just waits for the night quiet enough to hear it. Part 5. The promise kept. Elias woke before dawn. The fire had burned low, but the cabin was warm not from the embers, but from something softer, quieter. He rubbed his eyes, stood, and opened the door. The forest outside was pale blue and gold, washed clean by the cold night. Mist curled between the trees like breath, and there, just beyond the porch, were the tracks. Small, round, perfectly spaced, leading up to the step, then turning away again. He crouched, fingers hovering just above the prints. The snow around them had melted slightly, as if from heat or from something alive not meant to stay long. Next to the tracks, half buried in frost, was a smooth stone flat, dark, shaped almost like a heart. He lifted it carefully. Its surface was warm, engraved across the middle. 3 short lines, one long pressed deep, as if by a hand that remembered. Elias smiled. "You kept your promise," he whispered. The wind stirred, carrying the faint scent of pine and wet earth. Birds began to sing first one, then many a chorus spilling through the valley like morning itself was starting over. He set the stone on the porch rail, right where the sun hit it. It shimmered faintly, casting a thin red glow against the snow. Not fire, not warning. Just light, the kind you leave behind to remind the world that mercy happened here. Elias breathed deep, hands in his pockets, watching the trees sway. The same forest that once terrified him now looked like home. He turned back inside, hung his coat by the door, and whispered to the quiet, "Whatever comes next, I'll be ready." Outside, the wind brushed against the cabin once, softly, 3 short, 1 long, and then moved on. And every act of kindness echoes somewhere, sometimes in hearts, sometimes in forests. Comment the name of your city. Like this story, rate it from 0 to 10. Subscribe, because next time, the ones who need saving might be the ones who taught us how. Next, he gave the baby back, and the Bigfoot gave him something human in return.